Olfork Bayard, Chinlatang, and Atanbatu rode north from the kingdom of Trome into the wilderness of Abrigal. They served the feared tyrant Lord Fader Volki, seeking slaves and treasure to glorify his oppressive regime. Abrigal was a rugged land of forests, mountains, and vast hunting grounds, once home to a great civilization from which Suol's ancestors had sprung. Now, after 5 years of brutal conquest by Volki's forces, the land lay in ruin. Bitter winter winds swept across a depopulated landscape where only scattered bands of hunters and expatriated soldiers remained. Amidst the icy tundra and hostile plateaus, these survivors and a few defecting revolutionaries mounted a desperate resistance against the methodical murder and persistent despotism of their southern overlord. Horses trod glistening marshlands while wild geese honked warnings of winter. 3 hostile riders, smelling the distant salt sea, pulled their bridles as their mounts breathed steam into the brittle air. Clad in leather, wool, and armor against the mountain wind, the men warily approached a barn. Swords and ornate bows hung ready at their sides as they scanned a pasture of skittish sheep. In the loft, a terrified Abrigal farmer hid behind wheat, watching the invaders. He recognized them as Trome mercenaries, raiders bent on plunder, and prayed they would ignore his modest ranch. One man dismounted his gray horse and entered the weathered barn to check for life. The farmer froze near a door gap as sunlight pierced the planks and a startled pigeon took flight through the roof. The muscled Atanbatu alertly evaluated the barn's defensibility, comforted by the decaying timber of the primordial shelter. Inside, a hidden herdsman accidentally knocked against a manure fork, alerting the 3 interlopers. The herder jumped from an elevated window to flee, but Fork Bayard quickly drew his longbow. His arrow flew with lethal accuracy, dropping the screaming man into a thicket. "You blunderer," scoffed his accomplice, Chinlatang. "You should have saved that work for my axe." Fork Bayard retrieved his bloodied shaft from the corpse while Atanbu emerged from the barn with 2 stolen chickens. The trio spent the morning cooking the birds and discussing their grim determination. Chinla, a Manchurian horseman descendant of a barbarian leader, reveled in plundering Abrigal. Sent by his emperor to Trome to study warfare, he suggested they could have taken the herdsman captive. However, the hulking and loathsome Scandinavian archer, Fork Bayard, argued the old man was too weak to be a slave or a warrior. The third raider, a swarthy Bantu speaker named Atanbatu, complained of their constant diet of mutton and suggested hunting deer before continuing their quest for slaves and treasure. Atanbu had been enslaved twice, first by Turks in North Africa and later by the army of Trome. After proving his ferocity in battle against rebels, he was granted freedom. Ignoring the herder's livestock, the trio scouted for more victims, their cynical attitudes reflecting the brutal savagery of the monarchs they served. Fork Bayard ran thick fingers through his matted beard, weighing his control over his ruthless companions. Smoke from their fire drifted toward the cliffs as the dead herdsman's eyes stared blankly at the earth, a grim testament to the archer's cruelty. Abrigal, once a land of great limestone fortresses, now lay in ruins. Toppled, moss-covered stones marked where thousands had fallen defending the kingdom against Lord Volki's conquest. The survivors now lived as fearful nomads, hiding in cold, trackless forests to escape the murderers. Gaping towers watched over the broken landscape as the defeated people wailed for their lost culture. Clustered in frightened factions, they clung to survival amidst the rubble of their demolished country. Desperate leaders and their sickly followers clung to survival, passing down legends of a hero who would reclaim Abrigal. This myth centered on Thorvald Barbidal, a warrior who had fought ruthlessly against the invaders from Trome. To the devastated citizenry, he was the spark of hope against the carnal barbarity of their oppressors. Meanwhile, Volki's domineering henchmen Fork Bayard, Chinla, and Atanbu rode into the Black Forests. Atanbu, the skilled tracker, took the lead, his armor gleaming as he scanned for broken branches and overturned stones. A mile away, a herd of elk drank near the spot where the shepherd had died. Above them, a forceful figure lurked in the branches. As a buck lowered its head, the hidden man plummeted from his perch to strike. A dull gray-brown bull elk fell bellowing. Land-regal water hunter slashed its throat deep with his belt sheath. It collapsed instantly. He quickly skinned edible parts, removed heart, liver, and intestines. As he portioned meat, 3 horsemen neared in silence. The black tracker halted them. The Scandinavian signaled Chinlatang to circle the trees and block escape. "Don't let him reach thick woods," the bearded Viking muttered, loosening his broadsword. Fork-Beard stepped out. "Stay there," he ordered the Aboriginal hunter. Landregal turned, saw the Mongol close, dropped his knife, and stood warily. Few Aboriginal men were still so fit, most fighters dead or starving. "Got a horse?" the Viking asked. "Not for your lot," Landregal defied. Fork-Beard nodded. "Throw him your battle axe." Chinla tossed the double-edged weapon to his feet. Landregal eyed it grimly. The Viking lowered his bow and strode forward. One brutal swing of his broadsword would kill the helpless vagrant. Landregal snatched the Mongol's axe, blocked the strike, and fought fiercely. Metal clanged as they rolled in mud. The black tracker and Mongolian horsemen closed in on their leader, watching the trapped hunter's defiance. Fork-Beard won, pinning Landregal with a boot on his neck and sword at his chest. "Show your horses and pay tribute to Lord Volki," he growled. Defeated, Landregal led them to 2 nags tied to a willow by the stream. "Now we have a slave to cook and carry," Fork-Beard boasted. "Secure his kill and weapons. He comes with us." "I've heard of a torchbearer among these wretches," the Viking muttered. Landregal untied his weary horses and guided them to the elk carcass. Tanb, the black tracker, noted the hunter's courage but caught only fragments of the words. The Chinese mercenary followed the Vikings' words closely, understanding Norse better than the black tracker. "Rumors tell of a leader in ruined Aboriginal," Fork-Beard said. "He hunts elk, rallying survivors against the south. Capturing him would make a fine slave for Lord Volki." Landregal, their unwilling servant, tied elk meat to a gaunt horse. They pressed into dark woods. Nervous mounts whinnied through the trees as they followed a faint trail. Night fell among rocky crags. Landregal cooked for Suol Fork-Beard, who ate little, then asked, "What of Thorvald?" "Only a legend," Landregal replied. When Trome besieged Aboriginal, Thorvald fled into the North Sea with Emperor Tori Morton's daughter Lianu and the life-giving oracle staff. He sails home with them now. Legend says she'll return with the staff to rule Aboriginal. "That's peasant talk," the Northman spat. "Trome rules until Tori Morton is dust. Who is this wizard controlling the Emperor's oracle?" Landregal sighed. "Magic was common at court, but all died with him. His staff held a reflector that warned of enemies, while its pentacle projected a prophetic sphere to glimpse the future." Fork-Beard ignored his captive, turning to the rider Chinlatang. "Watch the slave. Swap with a Tanbu and wake me at dawn." The Viking drifted into a wary sleep. In Aboriginal's prime, sorcery was law. As Fork-Beard dozed, Tori Morton's pentacle began to pull at his soul. The magic bypassed his defenses, dragging his consciousness toward the distant, glowing sphere. In the stormy North Sea, Thorvald Barbidal and Princess Liana Tori Morton battled fierce winds that filled their longship's sails and battered its mast. Oarsmen rested as Thorvald steered through crashing whitecaps that tossed the vessel like driftwood. At the bow sat the weathered sorcerer, clutching Emperor Nicholas Tori Morton's prescient staff. Its glowing sphere warned of danger. The staff channeled Freyr's life-giving energy, healing the sick, animating the inanimate, even reviving the dead in skilled hands. Only 3 men could wield its full power to restore health and fertility. An oarsman muttered to his mate, "We crossed from Glassell to Aboriginal in 4 days. 8 days at sea now, and Thorvald seems lost." The following ships vanished. No moon, no sun, just clouds. Look at the old wizard staring into that pentacle. I fear what he sees and what it means for our ship. Liana Tori Morton sleeps, a shipmate shouted over the wind. She rests in the stern, at Thorvald's feet under his cape, through this raging swell. Thorvald hasn't left the helm in half a fortnight. Thorvald gripped the steering oar, staring into the dark, lurching waves that drenched his men in mist. He tacked zigzag against the northwest wind from Glasshill, his frame braced firm. Marmalak, the old wizard, struggled aft through the pitching boat. "What's your prognosis?" Thorvald asked. "Will we reach land before this gale breaks us?" "What does the pentacle show?" "It foretold only danger to one forgotten warrior," Marmalak replied grimly. "A clansman not with us became a slave. The staff showed a trio holding one of our own as prisoners. Any of a dozen original crewmen could be the one," Thorvald mused. "Who did you see?" Marmalak replied, "The vision was blurry, but I suspect your man, Landregal Water Hunter." "How far is Glasshill?" "We're being hunted," Thorvald said grimly. "A third of our men fell to Trome and Lord Volki. Escaping with the princess meant abandoning close allies." As dawn broke through the gloom, the cynical faces of the crew emerged. A flock of gulls shrieked overhead. Marmalak used a silent incantation to probe their minds for the direction of land. Suddenly, a pursuing ship materialized on the horizon. Meanwhile, in Trome, Lord Volki surveyed his legions from Dormanquest Castle. Clad in black and red robes with gold-ringed fingers, the sharp-eyed tyrant turned to his advisors to confirm the success of his conquest. "How are the fortifications progressing?" Volki demanded. His nervous advisor hesitated, wary of the Lord's volatile mood. Outside, the din of soldiers filled the air. Volki gestured for his secret police to close in. "Answer me." The morning had been a chaos of conflicting decrees. Volki's generals were baffled as he countermanded his own orders. Despite the confusion, his men remained loyal, bound by the wealth and power his dictatorship provided. "Lord," an assistant ventured, "we followed your commands. You had us store grain, then break the seals for a false emergency. You ordered walls built, then torn down. You made us burn the fields, then waste our water to douse the flames. The men are exhausted by these contradictions." "Idle minds breed revolution," Volki declared. "Keep the men busy. Independent thought has no place here. I will do the thinking. They must obey without question." "Understood, my lord," his confused aide replied. "All thought must originate from you." Volki signaled his secret police to stand down and stared out a window. The advisor bristled with resentment. Can a man live only to follow orders? He wondered. Volki, lost in his own mind, mused on the cycles of history. To him, humanity was a recurring play of masters and simpletons. He felt no guilt for his cruelty. In his eyes, the chaos of creation necessitated both good and evil. Without the hound's sharp teeth, he whispered to himself, the hare would never learn to run. Volki stood alone, his dark energy seemingly withering the morning sun. He tuned out nature, preferring the clangor of subjugated men and the heavy boots of recruits bought with foreign plunder. To Volki, his madness was a divine right, a power granted by the same decadent forces that built the universe. He drew strength from ancient, wicked myths of giants chained beneath the earth, believing evil was the true engine of command. Deep within the vaults of Dormanquest Castle, his secret police held those deemed abnormal in remorseless chambers. There, amidst the shadows of his victorious campaign, the despot's partisans hailed his rule as absolute, while he prepared to personally oversee the inquisitions of his captives. "What news of Abrigal?" Volki demanded. "Where is Tory Morton's scepter and the sorcerer?" His aide trembled. "Tory Morton is dead, but the staff and sorcerer are missing. We faced resistance from Glasshill barbarians, but they were too few. We suspect a boatload of survivors escaped north into the ocean. A curse on them." Volki spat, his eyes dark with fury. "Have you sent pursuit? What has been done to catch those who fled?" Volki's obsession with the scepter's power grew. He knew that without it, his conquest was incomplete, and the survivors from Glasshill remained a threat to his absolute. "A storm ruined our squadron," the aide admitted. "Only one ship remains, its fate unknown." Volki erupted in rage, clearing the room. Suddenly, a psychic tremor from the captain's charm signaled disaster. Left alone, the tyrant brooded on Tori Morton's lost scepter and his own grim destiny. He invoked Loki to shake his enemies and meditated on his role as a shepherd of livestock. To Volki, morality was a myth used to justify his ambition. He viewed himself as the ultimate tool of unification, willing to enslave humanity to forge a singular, unbending world order. If I must chain all of mankind to achieve my end, he vowed, then so be it. Lord Volki masked his deep fear of solitude with arrogant confidence, enduring a day of tedious briefings on state and military affairs. To Trome's ruler, being alone was a dangerous, biting threat. Meanwhile, at sea, Thorvald watched the violent waves. Their Abrigal pursuers remained eerily close, matching every maneuver. "How do they track us through the dark?" he asked. Marmalak Robles was baffled, fearing a specter or mind reader guided the enemy ship. Thorvald yearned for battle but feared the storm would claim them both first. As the sky brightened, Marmalak spotted land. Thorvald woke Princess Lianu as the jagged peaks of Glasshill rose from the ocean to meet them. 20 about as well as can be expected, the princess replied, asking how far they were from port. Thorvald explained Glasshill had no ports, only steep cliffs and deep fjords. He planned to find a hidden inlet to evade the storm and the lone ship from Trome still pursuing them. As the sun finally broke through the heavy clouds, it illuminated the jagged coast. Thorvald stared into a familiar opening between the massive cliffs, leading his exhausted crew away from the open sea. Once they entered the calm inland waters, the tension broke. The men rowed rhythmically, their oars dipping into the still bay as they sang low chants of gratitude to the gods for their safe arrival. Liana watched from the aft as the Trome ship stalled, wary of the towering cliffs. Her virtue and grace captivated Thorvald, binding him to her cause. Thorvald noted the enemy's hesitation. The captain feared the fjord's thousand hiding spots. "He's right to be suspicious," Thorvald remarked, planning to lead them deeper where reinforcements waited. Princess Tori Morton warned that letting Volki's men escape with knowledge of Glasshill's location would be fatal. While the Trome crew feared an ambush, Thorvald's exhausted men remained resolute. Marmalak distributed rations, a pungent, aging curry of fish and berries. Though the food was turning rancid in its barrels, the crew ate greedily, fueling themselves for the inevitable clash in the twisting narrows. "You're right," Thorvald agreed. "Volki must not learn the secrets of our waters." He pivoted his ship, charging the enemy bow first. Arrows whistled through the air, clattering against shields. Thorvald seized his longbow and struck the enemy helmsman, leaving their vessel adrift. As the ships collided, the men of Glasshill boarded with savage roars. "Secure the ropes!" Thorvald shouted, binding the ships together. From the aft, Liana watched the carnage with grim satisfaction, remembering her father's death at Volki's hands. Thorvald's berserkers, fueled by a life of raiding, unleashed a frenzy of notched blades and crimson havoc. The morning air filled with the screams of the defeated as the boarding party systematically crushed the Trome crew. "To Valhalla with them!" Thorvald roared, leading his berserkers into the bloody fray. He told Liana there was no time for mercy. The Trome ship and its crew had to be erased to protect their waters. As blades clashed and men fell, Marmalak Robles chanted to Odin, calling for the strength of stars and earth to embolden their hearts. The divine fervor worked. Soon, only the enemy helmsman remained alive amidst the carnage. Thorvald spared him, desperate to learn how they were tracked at night. Searching the man, they found a leather pouch containing a strange metal plate engraved with King Tori Morton's scepter. As Marmalak moved the icon, the metal token eerily tracked its motion, a prophetic compass bound to the sovereign's symbol. "This token tracks the scepter like a falling stone," Marmalak realized. It wasn't a sea sprite, but a dark contrivance of Lord Volki. As the crew scavenged the Trome ship, the metallic device suddenly glowed cherry red with natural heat. It burned through its strap and melted a hole straight through the hull. Within the Emperor's pentacle, Marmalak saw Volki's mocking, laughing face. He knew they had found his spyglass. Suddenly, the enemy ship ignited as if struck by lightning. Fire raced through the pitch and tar, turning the vessel into a pyre. Thorvald's men scrambled to save their loot, some diving into the icy fjord to escape the flash fire. The magical trap was sprung, leaving the crew to battle the flames. Barbidal cut loose from the burning wreck to save his own ship. On Thorvald's vessel, Marmalak eyed the scepter as Fader Volki and his legions watched from the shadows, acknowledging the doomed crew they left behind. With the enemy defeated, Thorvald guided his boat through the fjord's towering cliffs while Princess Tori Morton marveled at the landscape. Marmalak used the prophetic scepter to heal the wounded, gashes closed and bones knit instantly. Though he couldn't regrow a sailor's severed fingers without his divination book, the display of Nicholas Tori Morton's power silenced all skeptics. The crew watched in stunned silence as the wizard's magic erased weeks of agony in a single heartbeat. "We are close to Midgard," Thorvald told Lyanna, explaining that the Valkyries, choosers of the slain for Odin's Valhalla, protected these waters from Hel, the ruler of the dishonorable dead. Lyanna, a recent Christian convert, listened with wonder as they fled her fallen kingdom. Weary and anxious, Barbidal watched for the Norse capital, where thousands awaited the raiding party's grim news of Abrigal's fall to Lord Volki. Meanwhile, Landregal Waterhunter awoke to a frost-nipped morning, hiding his past as the Emperor's bodyguard. To survive the coming winter and Volki's scouts, he resolved to play the submissive servant. He watched the shifting season with sardonic eyes, knowing his knowledge of the princess's escape could mean his certain doom if discovered. At dawn, the Chinese horseman Chinlatang stirred the fire as the Viking Fort Bayard awoke. Along with a Mongolian ally, they prepared to move north into Abrigal's rugged mountains. Leading the group was a seafarer from Trome, while their prisoner, Landregal, trailed behind on weary horses. The party trekked past rocky crags, haunted by a hawk's cry. Captured and dismal, Landregal struggled to keep pace while fearing the marauders' greed. They were remnants of an alliance promised silver by a deposed emperor, a deal that ended in a bloody escape with no reward. Separated from a larger foraging party, Landregal now faced the shame of captivity, a fate nearly as grim as Hell's torment-filled domain for those who die without honor. Amidst the charred pastures and ruined farms of a war-torn village, the four riders reached a decimated church. Landregal, shivering in his threadbare rags, hoped to scavenge winter clothes, but a blinding, radiant orb of energy suddenly materialized above the rubble. This magnificent presence was so intense the men had to shield their eyes from its electric glow. Startled, the pillaging trio and their horses backed away from the shimmering light. Landregal, sensing a divine intelligence, called out to the god Balber, wondering if Odin had retrieved him from Hell. Yet, wary of the supernatural, he cautioned his captors. This could be a deception by Loki or a light sent for the blind god Hoth. They retreated slowly, awestruck by the protective brilliance hovering over the ruins. "Nonsense," for Bayard spat, dismissal of the light as a wizard's trap rather than a god's omen. The group hurried past the glowing ruins toward a dilapidated bridge spanning a meager creek. Landregal followed, his curiosity lingering even as they sought supplies in the ravaged village. Hidden beneath the rotting timbers lurked Or, a foul-smelling, scarred ogre larger than any man. As the horses neared, they balked at his stench. Or waited, tracking them with predatory hearing until the weakest link passed Landregal's frail mount. With a bestial snarl, the monster lunged from the ravine, dragging the horse into the muddy moat and tearing its throat open before a warning could be shouted. "Stop!" Landregal shouted as the horse was dragged into the shadows. For Bayard watched with grim vigilance as Or, a 1,000-pound ogre, claimed his kill beneath the rotting bridge. Though ogres are typically nocturnal and vulnerable only to a pack of dogs, this beast stood its ground in the daylight. Fork, Bayard and Chinla tried to taunt the monster, charging with their steeds and raining metal-tipped arrows into its thick hide, but the shafts did little more than enrage the formidable demon. Snarling, Oregon threatened to devour the men if they didn't abandon the crossing. Realizing they were outmatched, the riders retreated from the riverbed, soaking wet and furious. Burn it down, for Bayard spat, determined to leave the ogre without a home. Tanbatu ignited the bridge, his caution fueled by the first ogre he'd ever encountered. As the timber smoldered, the group fled, leaving behind lost supplies and a sense of dread. Landregal, shivering in Abrigal's cooling climate, scavenged a robe and rope from the ruins, fearing the hairy demon would follow. While the others gathered armaments, Fork Bayard urged haste, sensing an evil paroxysm haunting the valley. We must not tarry, Fork Bayard warned, wary of the dead spirits and bad omens. As they retreated, Landregal questioned Atanbu about their leader's winter plans. Atanbu's reply was grim. Fork Bayard cared nothing for immortality or omens, only the thrill of battle and the lure of gold. When does he return to Trome? Landregal asked. Atanbatu replied that Fork Bayard would only return when his horses staggered under the weight of silver and slaves. To men of his region, gold surpassed even the love of women or the thrill of battle. With enough silver, a man could buy a harem and drown his misery in drink. As they rode under grey, racing clouds, Landregal remained shaken by the ogre, the ruined church, and the bridge's destruction. He prayed to Odin, seeking sense in a life defined by bloodlust and the hollow glory of war. Their journey led them to a vine-shrouded limestone castle. Its belfry and minarets loomed over a plundered blockhouse, where Chinlatang began to scrutinize the suspended drawbridge with intense interest. The abandoned structure stood in bleak, unwelcome serenity. As the group approached, Chinlu and Fork Bayard debated its eerie stillness. Chinlu warned of potential sentinels, noting that the inhabitants seemed to have fled rather than fought. Fork Bayard agreed, pointing out the lack of bodies or battle scars, suggesting the garrison had withdrawn to Tory Morton's citadel before the army arrived. Sensing treachery in such a gracious abandonment, the Mongol horsemen urged caution. The men decided to scout from the shadows, concealing themselves and their horses among the dense forest shrubs. As they waited for nightfall to reveal the castle's secrets, they shared the last of Landregal's elk, watching the silent stone for any sign. Beneath the castle, a subterranean stream bubbled in total darkness, feeding a secret vault. This cavern housed massive chests of silver, ceremonial armor, and heraldic treasures riches too heavy to be moved. Guarding this hoard was Lardok Trapeler, a once powerful magician turned scully, blind demon. Cursed to his cold, wet tomb, Lardok clicked and whistled in the gloom, waiting for his master, Marmalak. He huddled against an earthen jar sealed with a Futhark warning, guarding its mysterious and dangerous contents. In the eternal dark, his lizard-like skin shook from the dampness, a wretched sentinel over the secrets and silver of men. Lardok Trapeler scrambled over mountains of silver and silk, his webbed hands clutching a heavy, rough-hewn urn. To the serpent-like creature, these riches were nothing compared to the jar's contents. A volume on wizardry and an exorcist's necklace. He hissed into the dark, obsessed with the promise that his master, Marmalak, would one day restore his humanity and soul. The jar held the condensed fears of mankind and secrets known only to three men, including the dreaded Lord Volki. Once a treacherous advisor who urged surrender to Trome, Lardok was now a wretched diviner doomed to a diet of roots and worms. He stood as a poised, audacious guardian of the castle's hidden magic, waiting for the day his service would end his subterranean exile. The Necklace of Hell, an ornate Ansate cross, grants its owner the terrifying power of death, the ability to drain life from crops, beasts, and men across vast distances. This medallion controls the transition into eternal torment, a power far beyond human understanding. Before the castle fell, Lardok Trapeler and Marmalak Herbalist clashed in a devastating duel of necromancy. Defeated by Marmalak's superior magic, Lardok was transformed into a subservient, troglodytic vassal, hiding the necklace and the Book of Tory Morton in a sealed jar. Only three men, Lardok, Marmalak, and the ruthless Lord Volki, possessed the occult knowledge to wield these artifacts. Now, the defeated sorcerer waits in the damp dark. Defeated by the superior Marmalak, the wizard Lardok Trapeler chose a lowly reincarnation over death. Anticipating his loss, Lardok stole Hel's necklace and a Book of the Dead, hiding them in a jar within a treasure-filled cave. To thwart the enemy, Abrigal soldiers collapsed the entrance, sealing Lardok and the riches beneath the fortress. Transformed and stripped of his magic, Lardok became a hideous, near-blind creature. He burrowed like a reptilian mole through the dark earth to reach the surface. Now a subservient shadow of his former self, he is forced into a nocturnal existence, emerging from his tunnel beneath the limestone walls only under the cover of night to scavenge for food. To defeat Lord Volki, 3 artifacts were vital: a spellbook, Hel's necklace, and Emperor Tori Morton's scepter. While the victor Marmalak held the scepter, the defeated Lardok hid the other two, swearing to keep them until his human form and magic were restored. Meanwhile, Forkbeard and his men approached the fortress under a heavy sense of dread. Haunted by an illogical lure, Forkbeard warned Chinla, Atanbatu, and Landregal to remain hidden and fireless. He felt a mocking, unseen presence watching them from the dark, hollow windows of the garrison. Despite their exhaustion, the men couldn't find peace. A sharp, shared apprehension kept them from true sleep as they waited for dawn to approach the silent stronghold. Under the cover of night, the blind, reptilian Lardok Trapeler emerged from his limestone tunnel. His heightened senses detected the malodorous presence of humans in the distant woods, sparking a surge of anxiety. Standing on powerful webbed feet to catch the wind, the fallen sorcerer navigated the terrain by instinct. After crossing a dank moat, he stumbled through the forest, driven by a territorial loathing and a need to protect his stolen treasures. Above, a silver moon slipped behind hazy autumn clouds, casting eerie halos over the landscape. As Lardok crept closer to investigate the intruders, Suol Forkbeard and his sleeping companions, his ominous presence did not go unnoticed. The Viking leader, stirred by a sudden, sharp warning in the air, sensed the monster's inauspicious approach. Chinlu awoke to find Forkbeard brawling with a high-pitched, screaming interloper. Believing it one of Loki's demons, Forkbeard fought the creature's caustic fangs and talons as Chinlu rushed to help. Together, they bound the mutant's limbs with rope from a horse's bridle, eventually securing the struggling Lardok to a stout spruce tree. As the men waited for dawn, Forkbeard dismissed the idea of accomplices, sensing the ghoul had blundered into them by accident. Lardok twisted in agony, stripped of his magic and dignity. When the first light of twilight finally touched the horizon, Forkbeard scowled at his captive, his thumb tracing the notched edge of his broadsword as he prepared to interrogate the fallen sorcerer. Atanbatu observed Lardok's scales and webbed feet, likening him to a man possessed by a crocodile spirit. Landregal suggested the creature was a guardian for the Abrigal fortress and urged Forkbeard to follow him to hidden treasure. Agreeing, the Viking released the wizard, who hissed in blind agony as the morning sun scorched his skin. Desperate to avoid dehydration, Lardok retreated toward his cool, subterranean grotto. He scrambled through the moat and vanished into his limestone burrow, unaware he was being tracked. Atanba, a master hunter, easily trailed the reptilian to his hiding spot and reported the location to Forkbeard. Now knowing the entrance to the demon's lair, Forkbeard began plotting a raid to seize the abandoned riches within. Lardok huddled in his dark grotto, clutching the heavy urn containing the stolen magic. Fearing discovery, he decided to move the artifacts to a safer location despite the blinding daylight. As he emerged from his tunnel beneath the limestone walls, he struggled to adjust his failing eyes, unaware that Forkbeard and Chinla were watching from the forest. The men observed the handicapped sorcerer as he limped toward the castle's half-raised drawbridge. Chinla wondered if the vessel held a hoard of gold. Waiting until Lardok was far from his lair, Forkbeard took aim with his longbow. A lethal shaft pierced the demon's scales between his shoulder blades. Shrieking in pain, Lardok dropped the jar. It rolled away, spilling the Tori Morton book and the key to the dead as he struggled piteously to reach them. Agony drained Lardok's life, his consciousness flickering like a dying flame after Marmalak's sorcery. He crawled toward the castle moat, a broken shell. As he reached the water, Sewell Forkbeard loosed a murderous arrow, striking the pathetic reptile. Lardock collapsed into the deep, dark depths, leaving his magical treasures on the bank. Curse my aim, Forkbeard spat, eyeing the dropped jar. He's in the moat, perhaps still alive. Since neither he nor Chinla could swim, Forkbeard sent his companion to fetch their horses, the tracker Atanda, and the Viking slave Landregal. Under the rising sun, the group prepared a grappling hook to cross the water and claim the ghoul's hidden secrets within the limestone walls. Forkbeard swung the grappling hook, snagging a bridge chain on his second attempt. He secured the line between his horse's saddle and a sturdy tree. Landregal, the elk hunter, shimmied upside down across the rope to reach the drawbridge. Once inside, he found the fortress eerily perfect, no bodies or weapons, as if the army had simply vanished. He lowered the bridge for his captors. Forkbeard then ordered Chinla to locate Lardock's lair. Chinla found a camouflage tunnel too narrow for a man, nearly ignoring the dropped magical vessel. "Grab that jar," Forkbeard commanded. With the artifact secured, the three men stood beneath the vaulted entrance, marveling at the castle's hauntingly pristine condition. The empty parapet stared down as Forkbeard examined the runic vase. With cruel curiosity, he ordered Landregal to smash it. The jar shattered, spilling Hell's necklace and a magical tome onto the stone. Forkbeard, ignoring the book, seized the silver necklace, identifying it as a key to the Keeper of the Dead to entice Lord Volki. While the trio scavenged the castle for missed riches, Landregal, secretly illiterate despite his claims, retrieved the book. He hid the leather volume beneath his robe, watching his captors find nothing but empty rooms. As the thieves combed the granite halls, Landregal waited in silence, clutching his prize. Meanwhile, far from the hollow fortress, Thorvald's exhausted men finally reached the warm welcome of mid. To the shock of Lianu and the sailor, a pile of kindling sprang to life. Guided by Marmalak's scepter, a spindly, thorny stick man rose from the dead branches, dancing with a sickening, hypnotic motion. The magical display was brief but terrifying, leaving the witnesses entranced by the wizard's power. Overwhelmed, Princess Liana fainted. When she was revived with cold water, Marmalak challenged her faith, claiming his control over creative energy was absolute. Liana, recovering her resolve, asked why his wonders were so frightening. It was intended to unnerve you, he admitted coldly. Seeking to prove his transcendence further, he plucked a withered blossom from the wood, ready to demonstrate a new, eerie enchantment. Marmalak focused his staff on a shriveled bloom, his fingers rapping against the wrinkled seeds. Suddenly, the flower glowed, returning to vibrant life. He handed the red blossom to Liana, laughing softly to ease her fear. Though stern, he meant to warn her. Lord Volki's magic was just as potent but lacked any goodwill. In Midgard, life was a blend of ferocity and comfort. While the Viking clans were famously bellicose raiders, the communal lodge offered a peaceful refuge. After a long rest, Thorvald emerged, hungry and recovered. Liana greeted him warmly near a cauldron of stew. In this society, leadership wasn't appointed, it was earned through skill and the mutual respect of the hardy sailors. In Glassel, no king ruled, authority belonged to the strongest warriors and master builders of longships. Thorvald awoke feeling the heavy weight of defeat, his limbs like leaden ballast. Around him, his crew lingered in stony silence, their spirits crushed by a lack of promised silver for defending the Emperor. "How do the gods find your spirits?" Thorvald asked Liana. She remained resolute, noting that sinking their pursuers had bought them safety from Volki's reach. Thorvald agreed, his tactical mind returning. Volki's power at sea was limited. By using their superior navigation, they could still turn the tide. Liana mourned her father and their humiliating defeat. Without the promised silver, the men of Glassel were bitter and unyielding. Thorvald, a leader of devious warriors driven by greed rather than virtue, struggled to manage their foul tempers. The lodge echoed with the angry shouts of his men. "Why led us to the citadel?" a red-bearded warrior challenged. "We should have retreated to the ships where we are strongest." The crew roared in agreement. Thorvald countered that without Midgard's full strength, they were doomed. He justified his retreat, arguing that winter gales would have sunk the fleet regardless. "We were outnumbered," he insisted. "What choice had we but to die uselessly? Death is more honorable than retreat." A Viking roared. Liana cut through the noise, promising 100 pounds of silver hidden in a southern blockhouse. The men were skeptical, the path was crawling with Volki's soldiers, and they refused to risk their lives on speculative treasure. Liana argued that Volki was a common threat to all Glassel, but Thorvald was blunt. "These men want to see the color of your silver before they bleed again." Defeated by their greed, Liana retreated to Marmalak. "Imbeciles," she fumed, her logic failing against their stubborn depravity. Despite Thorvald's personal support, the crew remained unmoved by talk of valor. "Volki's tyranny will reach these shores before they act," Liana cried to Marmalak. Though her faith in Jesus was momentous, she refused to watch her people slaughtered. She sought a plan to sway Thorvald's men toward realism. Marmalak warned that her quest for a holy war was a dangerous contradiction. "Volki lurks in shadows, seeking to eradicate light," he cautioned. "He has no compassion, no weakness." Liana insisted her goal was simply to restore Abrigal to its rightful rulers and the new faith. Marmalak remained skeptical, noting that men are never stable in faith or government. In Glassel, violence was the traditional way of choosing leaders. To change their minds without it would defy centuries of Viking history. The sorcerer warned the princess. Midgard's warriors value battle over religious intellect. Their loyalty is won through strength, not persuasion. A brawl soon erupted between Thorvald and a defiant crewman over Abrigal's spoils. The lodge cheered as Barbidal threw the dissenter across a table, ending the dispute. Thorvald remained unfazed, calmly drinking as the crowd hailed his dominance. Meanwhile, Lardok Logaria's traveler lay dying in his castle's moat. Arrows pierced his back, leaving him paralyzed in the freezing, bloody water. Gasping through gill-like neck incisions, he watched the rippling light above, hidden in the muddy depths of his fallen sanctuary, a grim end for a once powerful ruler. Consumed by the agony of Suolfork Bayard's cowardly assault, Lardok clung to life with a singular, demented focus. Revenge. Webbed claws gripping murky rocks, he anchored himself against a sludge-covered boulder to remain hidden beneath the moat's surface. For hours, the incapacitated sorcerer endured strenuous soreness, refusing to succumb to the dark water. Inside the castle, Fork Bayard, Chinlatang, and Atanbatu scavenged the halls. Though the fortress was built to withstand massive invasions, its interior was bafflingly hollow. Every gilded chandelier, silver candelabra, and ornate coat of arms had been stripped away, leaving only bare wood and useless relics. Frustrated by the lack of loot, the trio converged in a stark, oak-furnished chamber that loomed over the castle entrance. 57 Landregal sat by the drawbridge, weighed down by the threat of reprisal. Though the horses were tethered nearby, escape seemed impossible without weapons. Fork Bayard, sensing his thoughts, ordered Atanba to bring the mounts inside and raise the bridge, sealing their confinement. Inside the barren manor, Fork Bayard voiced his mounting frustration. The castle had been stripped clean, no gold, no wine, not even a scrap of food remained. Chinlatang argued that while much was moved to Tory Morton's citadel, the hurried retreat suggested a local hiding place. Fork Bayard then noted a single anomaly. A wall in the blockhouse had been intentionally dismantled. As the trio debated the missing treasure, Landregal shifted on his bench, carefully concealing a hidden book beneath his cloak. Chinlatang suggested the demon's lair, a narrow, guarded den, might hold the spoils. Fork Bayard agreed, his eyes gleaming with greed. He devised a ruthless plan. Landregal would be forced to serve as their burrower. Stripped and defenseless, the Viking would be sent into the pitch-black depths of Lardok's refuge to scavenge for riches. I have an idea, Fork Bayard declared, leading the group to the drawbridge. At his command, the gate was lowered. The men descended cautiously toward the cramped footpath at the castle's base, ready to force Landregal into the viper's hollow beneath the walls. Braving the autumn chill, a stripped Landregal began digging into Lardok's hideaway, leaving his secret book of magic hidden in his robes. Using an old flagpole as a rod, he widened the narrow limestone shaft, hauling debris out by rope. When Atanba passed him a burlap torch, the firelight revealed a staggering sight. The castle's lost treasure glittering in the gloom. Spurred by greed and survival, Landregal dug faster. Above, the atmosphere turned supernatural. Hell's silver necklace and a destructive Ansate cross pressed against Fork Bayard's skin, their hypnotic power surging through him. As the artifact's ancient magnetism took hold, the reality of the dig began to warp into a surreal vision, threatening to consume the leader's mind. The magic of Hell's Cross briefly flooded Fork Bayard with visions of the dead, but he fought off the hallucinations, refocusing on the tunnel. Below, Landregal's excited shouts echoed. It's all here. In the fading torchlight, the hunter found the cavern packed with Lardok's chests. Tearing into a strong box, he discovered silver trays and smaller containers overflowing with heavy gold coins. Above, greed burned in the eyes of Fork Bayard, Atanba, and Chinlatang as they peered into the darkness. Don't be coy, Fork Bayard barked, ordering the hunter to send up a sample. Landregal placed a small, heavy box into the leather pouch and hauled it up. The leaden weight confirmed their suspicions. The castle's lost fortune was finally within their grasp. Chinlu and his companions feverishly unearthed a hidden cache beneath Lardok's fortress. Finding more than they ever imagined, a vast wealth stolen from the people of Abrigal, they dug with bare hands to widen the passage. A torch revealed a storeroom overflowing with armor, art, and jewelry. Realizing they couldn't take it all, they bypassed bulky treasures and crates of silver, focusing solely on the finest gold they could carry by horse. Once their pouches were full of the most precious metals, Su'ul Forkbeard ordered the entrance meticulously camouflaged. They left behind a fortune large enough to fund an army, carrying only a fraction of the bounty back to Trome while keeping the secret of the hidden cave secure. 62 With more men and horses, we'd fill the vaults of Trome and be wealthy for a lifetime, Chinla noted, eyeing the sky. The first winter tempests were looming. Su'ul agreed the fair weather was a fading memory, and snow would soon bury the lowlands. The men loaded their horses with gold ingots and coins, the weight so immense the beasts faltered. Landregal quietly secured his book of magic beneath his robes as they began the long trek south. During the ride, Atanbu offered the captive Landregal grim but vital advice: fight for Volki's army or rot in prison. He urged the hunter to show his strength to the chancellors to earn his status, just as the others had. As night fell, they halted to rest their burdened horses, the silence of the road heavy with the uncertainty of their futures in Trome. As the men tethered their horses, a hare bolted from the brush. Forkbeard pursued it into the woods, ordering Chinlatang and Atanba to tend the fire and watch their prisoner. While Atanba patiently struck flint to spark a blaze, Forkbeard felt the cold press of the silver ansate cross against his skin, a sinister souvenir from Lardok's tunnel rumored to grant mastery over all it touched. Sensing a strange sovereignty, Forkbeard felled the hare with a single arrow. When he reached down to finish the kill, the vibrant animal died instantly at his mere touch. Stunned by this sudden lapse into death, the Viking puzzled over the artifact's dark power. He returned to the growing fire, carrying his prize and the weight of a grim, newfound ascendancy. Chinla greeted Su'ul, who indifferently threw the dead hare at Landregal's feet, ordering the slave to cook it. As the group huddled in the callous darkness, Landregal prepared the meal while harboring silent hopes for his friend's safety in Midgard. He weighed the possibility of Thorvald's return to Abrigal, knowing a counter-raid would not come before spring. Watching the embers, he contemplated his own slim chances of escape. The next morning brought a bitter chill. Landregal hid a book of magic beneath his burnous as the men packed their looted treasure. Setting off, Forkbeard commanded Atanba to scout ahead, hunting not just for game, but for any survivors with horses who could be forced to carry their mounting hoard of gold. Atanbu and Landregal trailed behind, passing the charred bridge where a dead horse still lay, a grim relic of their past battle with an ogre. As they reached the lowland farms, the ruins of a decimated church came into view, still pulsing with a strange, radiant energy. Suddenly, a beam of light struck Landregal like lightning. Rather than pain, he felt a profound awakening, a voice affirming his humanity and worth above the surrounding violence. While the light offered Landregal a sense of salvation and intelligence, his captors recoiled. The three raiders spurned the inviting warmth, shading their eyes and fleeing the divine presence. Burdened by treasure, the horses stumbled along the rocky crags as the group retreated into the twisting mountain paths toward Trome. Leaving the green valley, the group endured a 4-day trek toward the border of Trome. Famished, they scavenged a dead shepherd's barn, where Landregal received permission to bury the owner. As they dug, Atanba warned Landregal of his grim future. In Trome, Su'ul Forkbeard is a powerful owner of many slaves, and Landregal may soon be sold. Atanba described the terrifying rule of Fader Volki and the dungeons of Dormanquest, where prisoners are worked to death or perish from illness within a year. Horrified by a life of permanent servitude, Landregal realized his only hope for survival lay in the military. As he rolled the shepherd into a shallow grave, he vowed to volunteer for Volki's army, asking Atanba how he might be chosen to serve. "Test me in battle," Atanba demanded. Victory against the kingdom's dissenters meant a place in Volki's army. Landregal hesitated, though a seasoned killer, his recent encounter at the ruined church had ignited a craving for redemption. He would play along to survive, but he now yearned for a new, perhaps brief, life of light. Meanwhile, Lardok Trapeler lay broken in his castle's muddy moat. Kept alive by dark magic and memories of the fall of Abrigal, the sorcerer, now trapped in a reptilian form, clung to life with stubborn intensity. Following Suol's attack, his only remaining purpose was a singular, burning thirst for revenge against those who had ravaged his land. To reclaim his humanity, he would have to face Marmalak's power once more. Lardok Trapeler clung to his broken existence, crawling from the moat to survey his ruined stronghold. The fallen walls and lowered drawbridge were grim reminders of his greatest loss, Hell's Necklace and his indispensable Book of Magic. The mental agony of their theft rivaled the physical sting of Forkbeard's arrows. Resigned to a winter within the castle, Lardok found fuel for fire but faced a desperate lack of food. Scavenging for bark and moss, his hatred for the kingdom of Trome solidified. Despite the stabbing pain of his wounds and the meager life of a pitiful ghoul, his will to survive remained absolute. He reflected on his 3 fatal blunders, challenging Marmalak, crossing Forkbeard, and falling for the ambush, vowing they would be his last. As winter's first snow fell, Lardok gathered firewood within his plundered, silent estate. Abandoning his remaining treasures to the frost, he struggled to survive the spiritless cold. Meanwhile, in Trome, the dictator Fader Volki surveyed his army under a somber sky. Reflecting on his rise through genocide and butchery, he justified his cruelty to Governor Gulari. Volki mocked the Holy Ones, arguing that their passivity and refusal to meet violence with force made them the easiest to conquer. To Volki, concepts like kindness and brotherhood only held meaning because of the existence of betrayal and malice. He dismissed the Christian heaven as a fool's myth, choosing instead to embrace the brutal, necessary reality of his own dark rule. Live for the present, Gulari, Volki urged. Trust only what you can see and touch. Gulari agreed, mocking the weak who cling to the afterlife. To him, Christians were timid prey whose ideology invited domination by men of unyielding strength. Their goodness was merely a shadow cast by Volki's power. Together, they plotted to rule, with Volki ordering a list of faithful dissenters to be imprisoned. My will must be conclusive, the dictator declared, seeking to end all who dared dispute him. As they conspired to crush the holy men, 4 exhausted travelers from the northern kingdom finally reached the outer courtyard of Dormanquest Castle, their long journey nearing its end. Suol Forkbeard, clad in armor, shouldered his horse's packs and demanded an audience with Lord Volki. While the party unpacked, Landregal, his eyes now reflecting a strange, detached calm, asked Atanba when he might fight for his freedom. Atanba warned that such opportunities aren't given, they must be seized. At the Great Wall, Suol grew insistent, clutching the stolen necklace of hell. Its dark power overwhelmed a sentry, who collapsed as if struck down. The commander arrived to assess the scene as Suol claimed to bear urgent news and pretentious wealth from the fallen Abrigal. The guard's superior, wary but intrigued by the display of power, moved to relay the message to Volki. Fader Volki greeted Suol with sharp suspicion, instantly sensing the dark power of Hell's Cross. He dismissed Governor Gulari, leaving the room heavy with tension. Suol dropped bags of gold at Volki's feet, claiming they were a mere token of the vast hoard hidden in Abrigal. He offered to retrieve the rest if granted 100 men and horses. Though pleased by the gold, Volki's true focus remained on the supernatural. Through telepathy, he sensed the talisman hidden beneath Suol's armor and demanded its surrender. Stunned that Volki knew of the artifact, Suol reluctantly pulled the handled cross from his dirtied shirt and handed it over, acknowledging the dictator's superior, predatory insight. "Where did you find this?" Volki asked, ignoring the sacks of gold to obsess over the engraved silver cross. Suol noted the ruler's fixations. Forkbeard explained they'd found it in a jar guarded by a reptile beneath a castle. As Volki gripped the cross, a surge of darkness met his magical will, granting him control over the forces of death. Suol shuddered at the man's sudden, impenetrable aura. Volki dismissed him, granting him the gold and permission to lead a future expedition with 2 companies of men. Su'ol returned to the courtyard with his gold, while his companions, Chinlu and Atanba, cheered and planned lives of luxury and celebration. Su'ol claimed Forkbeard as his slave. If the hunter didn't work his land well, Su'ol mused, prison would. In the shadow of Dormanquest Castle, Landregal was forced into labor on Su'ol's farm. As winter loomed, the overworked slaves suffered under pitiless overseers, denied fires and fed only stale bread. Frostbite was common, and the situation seemed hopeless. Landregal whispered of escape to a veteran slave named Sawtooth. The old man was grim. Trome was landlocked and crawling with Volki's soldiers. Runaways are fair game, Sawtooth warned. Captives face execution or the living death of the prisons. When Landregal asked about joining Volki's army instead, Sawtooth grew suspicious. Most slaves were former enemies of Trome who harbored pure hatred for the regime. Gauging Landregal's powerful build, the thrall guessed, "You aren't from here, are you? You look like a warrior." 75 You're right, Landregal admitted. "I came from Glassell to defend Emperor Tori Morton." Sawtooth paled, warning the Viking that such a confession meant death. The governor had a price on the heads of the northern warriors. Undeterred, Landregal spoke of restoring Princess Lyanna to her throne. He revealed a magic book he'd scavenged, which detailed a powerful staff and the silver cross now held by Volki. Sawtooth was skeptical. His Christian faith made him wary of the unholy black arts. He whispered of Volki's terrifying reputation for clairvoyance and mind-reading from within his dark palace. Landregal asked if the slave could read the runes, but Sawtooth couldn't. Instead, he offered something better: a way to escape. Over the following months, Landregal plotted his flight from the farm. Winter struck Trome with a fury that stalled all travel, trapping Forkbeard in his warm home to count his gold. Meanwhile, his slaves withered from cold and hunger. Landregal, now sick and scrawny, clung to life by studying Larduk's magic book in secret, though its runic spells remained beyond his mortal reach. Only wizards like Volki could truly wield such sorcery. Using the silver cross, the key to Hell's realm, Volki meditated on the suffering of the dying. Hell, the voracious warden of the dead, offered no escape to those she claimed. From his dark palace, Volki strained his mind through the cross's power, searching for any enemies near the brink of annihilation to pull into her eternal orb of anguish. A Viking sailor, wounded in Thorvald's battle against Trome, lay in a Midgard lodge. Though Marmaloc used the royal scepter to heal him, a darker power intervened. Volki's spell surged from Dormanquest, overwhelming the wizard's magic. The sailor twisted in agony, letting out a baleful scream as Lyanna Tori Morton rushed to his side. She felt his hand turn ice cold, his eyes filled with a horrific, helpless fright before his breath simply stopped. At that moment, Volki sneered in victory, releasing his grip on the silver cross. Marmaloc sensed the enchantment, but he was too late. The sailor's soul was sucked like a vacuum into hell's diabolical gravity, trapped forever in a sphere of restive woe. Shaken by the sailor's death, Lyanna pleaded with Marmaloc. His life was stolen. Marmaloc calmly explained that most magic is simply a manipulation of perception or a complex force yet to be understood by science. He distinguished between trickery and divine dynamism, the fundamental powers of creation and destruction. Lyanna countered, citing Christ's divine knowledge and his warnings for humanity's salvation. Marmaloc agreed that Jesus wielded creative powers beyond the comprehension of his time, proving through his life the value of righteousness. However, the wizard left Lyanna with a haunting caveat. Even the most perfect laws have flaws, and there are exceptions to every absolute. "I see your point about walking the moral middle ground," Lyanna agreed, watching Marmaloc with warmth. Despite her fear after the sailor's death, she remained determined to instill her pragmatic faith in the Vikings. "Our survival prevails against forces seeking our destruction," Marmaloc declared. "Evil's final aim is a return to nothingness." Yet a celestial force older than gods or men powers all life. Aligning with this universal intelligence defines our consciousness. Seeking the void is mere stupidity. He spoke with resentful respect for the Dark Lord, Fedor Antonovich Volky. That void of consciousness is exactly what the Lord of Dormanquest desires. His resolve is as potent as the divine powers that first created us. Physical stress eroded Liana's perception, leaving her to dull, menial tasks like bandaging and cooking while Marmalak battled a distant psychic threat from Trome. Meanwhile, as a fierce winter trapped Zuul fork-barriered in Ubrian, he brooded by his fire. Though his violent service to Trome had bought him wealth and security, the memories of war left a bitter taste. He mused morbidly that where reason fails, blood must flow. His restlessness grew, fueled by red wine and a lingering, taunting ruthlessness. His grim reflection was interrupted by the arrival of Dmitry Rostov-Gulari, Ubrian's shrewd governor. Escorted by a servant, the politician entered with ice clinging to his mustache, seeking news of Zuul's council with Fedor Volky. Cold howled against Zuul's walls as Governor Gulari entered, his cheeks flushed red. Though Zuul offered a seat with suspicious respect, he knew Gulari was merely a potent tool of Fedor Volky's autocratic will. Backed by the Lord of Dormanquest, the calculating politician held absolute authority over taxes and law. Gulari remained standing, dismissing his burly driver truck to the door. "Have you come for more taxes?" Zuul snapped, irritated at the intrusion. "Take them and leave. I am here to discuss our ruler," Gulari countered. "What are Volky's intentions for spring? Did he mention new conquests?" Distrusting the man's motives, Zuul offered wine and replied cautiously, "Lord Volky shared no specific plans with me." Zuul sensed a cold greed in Gulari that rivaled his own. He pressed the governor to drink, unaware that Gulari already knew of the Abrigal treasure through the reckless bragging of Zuul's partners. Evading the topic of spoils, Gulari shifted to a darker mission. Fedor Volky's order to root out the Christian faith spreading among the thralls. "Which of your slaves preach these new doctrines?" Gulari demanded. Zuul admitted his captives from Abrigal held lingering ties to their crushed churches but dismissed their faith as suffering murmurs. When he offered a full list of his workers, Gulari clarified his target. Volky sought only the spiritual leaders, those whose allegiance to a higher power threatened his own absolute rule. 83 Next, Volky will demand the rivers run backward. Zuul scoffed, vowing to crush any religious dissent. Intoxicated and belligerent, he ranted that war was his only god, his goblet crashing to the floor as he declared his sole loyalty to his blade and the glory of Trome. Satisfied that the captain wasn't harboring Christians, Gulari prepared to leave. "Report any suspicious activity," he advised, focused on Volky's goal to eradicate the faith. As they departed into the stinging ice, Gulari brooded over the hidden treasure. Truck, his face numbed by the frost, growled a reminder. He had seen the Mongol partner exchanging Abrigal gold in a tavern. The hunt for the raiders' wealth was far from over. Gulari watched the frozen distance, cynical and greedy. "If we taxed the peasants' prayers, we'd be rich beyond our dreams," he told Truck. "Why bother suppressing a new religion when you could profit from it?" Yet, knowing Volky's iron military grip, Gulari kept further descent to himself as they hurried toward Ubrian. On Zuul's farm, Landregal Water Hunter found a confidant in Sawtooth, a ragged laborer with missing teeth. Amidst the grueling cold and stable muck, Landregal whispered secrets gleaned from a stolen book of spells. "These runes reveal 3 practitioners of black magic," he hissed to Sawtooth. "They are guided by this volume, a prophetic staff, and a sorcerer's necklace. The slaves say Lord Volky of Dormanquest's castle is a master of dark magic," Sawtooth said. "He reads minds and blights his enemies from afar. Only dead men double-cross him." In the winter barn, Sawtooth pulled a silver inlaid sword, Helmshurt, from the straw. Landregal saw his freedom in its razor edges. "We stole this from Fort Baird's armory," Sawtooth whispered. It's for anyone brave enough to fly. Landregal gripped the blade before handing it back. In spring, we escape on horseback. Guard this well. As Sawtooth hid the weapon, a violent cough racked his frail frame. Years of bondage had broken his health. I doubt I can help you, the serf admitted, his strength fading even as the hope of steel remained hidden beneath the hay. Suffering from dysentery and malnutrition, the broken slaves offered only prayers against their oppression. Meanwhile, a wind-old Sioux fork-beard brooded by the fire, haunted by the meager treasures he'd scavenged from Lardock. He ignored Governor Gulari's warnings about Lord Volkey's crusade against Christianity, exhausted by the nightmare of pest wars. Volkey remained a terrifying shadow, a dictator who ruled through a calculated balance of agony and reward. In his court, the most hideous and cruel assignments fetched the highest price, ensuring his subjects remained bound to his dark intellect. Fork-beard, though weary, knew better than to underestimate the deadly intimidation Volkey could unleash upon the world. 87 Volkey's reign prioritized material wealth over morality, rewarding decapitation more than honest labor. Once seen as a savior, he was now a neglectful tyrant ruling through terror and a small, ambitious inner circle. Despite growing resentment, the populace remained silent to ensure their own survival under Trome's harsh laws. Meanwhile, Governor Gulari traveled through the biting night to the village of O'Brien. Upon arrival, his driver truck stabled the horses and retired to a bed of straw and leather. Entering his dark office, a shivering Gulari huddled into his heavy overcoat, fruitlessly sifting through the cold ashes of a dead fire. As Governor Gulari kindled a fire, he mulled over his orders from Volkey to hunt down and report any religious subversion among the serfs. He suspected Captain Fork-beard was hiding something about the slaves' faith but lacked proof. Meanwhile, at Volkey's palace, fortune hunters Atanbatu and Chinlatang basked in newfound glory. Atanba, dazzled by his meteoric rise from poverty, indulged in ornate armor and a harem, nearly lost in his own irresponsible enthusiasm. In contrast, Chinla, born to nobility and hardened by war, remained composed. He acted as a grounding force for Atanba, navigating the luxuries of Dormanquest Castle with a practiced, low-profile discipline that the common-born soldier lacked. Late at night, Chinla warns Atanba to guard his tongue and his irresponsible passions. He reminds him that only they and Captain Fork-beard know of the vast treasure remaining in Abrigal. While they whisper in the shadows of the castle, their thoughts are not secret. Lord Volkey, the master of Dormanquest, can read their minds without ever needing to hear their words. The narrative then shifts to a cosmic scale, describing a primordial creation where energy, light, and darkness were tallied by a maker. In this ancient accounting, the rebel forces of darkness which define Volkey's power were the last to be counted. Existence is presented as a relative balance of matter, time, and eternal energy, with Volkey representing the darkest sum. Volkey's power stems from forces expelled during creation. Though he craves non-existence, he is bound by the Creator's will that nothing truly ceases to be, only pure energy is eternal. Viewing existence as garbage, Volkey plots to cheat the egotistic assessor of time. Sensing the secret greed of the fortune hunters, he lets out a chilling laugh that echoes through the castle. As winter thaws into spring, Landregal and Sawtooth remain enslaved. Landregal studies a book of spells, though its symbols remain uninterpretable. His focus remains on returning to Abrigal, bolstered by the hidden broadsword, Helmsheart, which is whispered to possess supernatural power beyond its razor-sharp edges. The helm of A commanded respect through the mere threat of its power, rendering its possessor redoubtable. To Landregal Water Hunter, it was the key to a safe escape from Trome alongside Sewell's fastest horse. Fork-beard, distracted by his vast, uncounted armory, remained oblivious to its theft. In the lodge at Midgard, Thorvald struck a fire. Surrounding him was a seafaring force of 1,000 marauders who valued combat dominance over gold. Though originally focused on Abrigal, Barbidal, now joined by Lianu and Marmalak, set his sights on the riches of Dormanquest Castle. While the Vikings lacked the organizational skill for such a siege, Fader Volki did not. Meanwhile, the first thaw of spring turned Abrian's soil to mud, whispering of change. As spring thaws the ground, a cautious hope stirs among the slaves. Suol Forkbeard remains distracted by dreams of his southern gold, oblivious to the plot brewing in his own stables. Landregal Water Hunter, fueled by a mystical light and a hidden book of spells, prepares his escape alongside the resilient Sawtooth. Their target: the Black Stallion and the legendary sword Helmshurt. Under a sliver of moonlight, they move like shadows. Landregal's kinship with beasts quiets the stallion as he secures his stolen treasures. Sawtooth stands ready at the gate, the path to freedom nearly within reach. But as they led the horse forward, the silence of the night is shattered by the sharp snap of a twig. Going somewhere. Forkbeard's voice cuts through the night as he and his guards corner the pair. Landregal draws Helmshurt, the ancient symbol of freezing his foes in momentary terror. Sawtooth grabs a pitchfork, ready to stand his ground for their escape, but Landregal refuses to leave a friend behind. The clash is intense. Landregal's blade shatters a shield and fells a guard while Forkbeard roars, driving heavy steel against the mystical sword. Amidst flying sparks, Landregal uses the stallion's bulk as a shield, vaulting into the saddle. He hauls Sawtooth up just as Forkbeard lunges. With a final flash, Helmshurt strikes the captain's arm. Forkbeard recoils, disarmed, as the duo gallops into the dark. The stallion thunders past the wounded Forkbeard, carrying Landregal and Sawtooth north. As arrows whistle through the dark, Governor Gulari learns of the theft. The horse, the spellbook, and the legendary Helmshurt. In Dormanquest, the sorcerer Fader Volki senses the book's movement, his dark laughter echoing as the game shifts toward the princess and the staff. The journey is brutal. Sawtooth, broken by winter, fades in a sheltered ravine. With his final breath, he entrusts the sword and book to Landregal. After burying his friend, Landregal rides alone, reaching the ruined castle of southern Abrigal as summer arrives. The treasure cave remains hidden, waiting. Lardoc Lagaria's Trapeler emerges from the shadows, a withered lizard creature hungry for his stolen book. Recognizing Landregal's power, he offers a desperate bargain. His secrets for a return to human form. As they forge an uneasy alliance, three massive forces converge on the ruins under the summer heat. Thorvald's longships beach at dawn, carrying Princess Lianu and the glowing oracle staff. From the south, a scarred Forkbeard leads Volki's elite, driven by a thirst for gold and Landregal's blood. The final battle for Abrigal ignites as the Horde's location is revealed. The northern realms tremble, the war for Midgard has begun. Deep in the castle, Landregal and a partially restored Lardoc prepared for war with runes and traps. As Forkbeard's forces charged, Landregal's Helmshurt sang, and the helm of Os struck terror into his foes. Mid-battle, Thorvald's Vikings crashed into the rear, leaving Chinlafallen and Atamba fighting for his life. The true threat arrived as Fader Volki rode through the carnage, his necklace draining the life from all he passed. He confronted Marmalak in the Great Wall, seeking the staff of Nicholas Torrey Morton. As light and darkness clashed, the earth shook and treasure scattered. The mundane battle paused, every eye fixed on the supernatural duel unmacking creation itself. Landregal charged as Volki's living shadows engulfed Marmalak. Using the final spell, he drove Helmshurt into the Ansate Cross, shattering the necklace. The cataclysmic backlash consumed Volki, his body aged 1,000 years in seconds, crumbling to dust. With their master gone, Trome's forces broke. Forkbeard fled into the southern night, his fate a mystery. Victory came at a heavy price for Thorvald's Vikings. As dawn broke over the ruins, Lyanna claimed her father's staff to rebuild a new Abrigal. Lardoc, his human form finally restored by the magical surge, chose a lonely exile in the north to seek redemption. The War of Light and Shadow ended, leaving only the quiet work of healing a broken land. Landregal served as captain of Lyanna's guard, his rule guided by mercy and the light of the ruined church. Abrigal entered a golden age where Viking strength and Christian compassion thrived, and magic finally served the people. In Midgard, Thorvald toasted the victory that broke Trome's Dark Lord, ensuring his legend lived on. Creation proved stronger than destruction. Light endured because men like Landregal chose to carry it, even through blood and ash. An uneasy but lasting peace settled over the realms, while Hell's gates remained closed. Freyr smiled upon the rising kingdom. Thus ended the saga of Abrigal, a tale of betrayal and redemption, proving that even in the deepest dark, the spark of hope survives.